Hey everyone, I'm back. Earlier we had I had laid out the negative space and then the middle ground, and I'm about to do the foreground and focal point. Just as a quick reminder, we are doing the take it apart, put it back together, an analysis project. And I've been looking at this artist, Jörg Dressler, who I got permission from to reference his paintings. And I was excited about his multiple valued flat, low chroma backgrounds that were really kind of graphic designy. And then how he used these nice little detail areas with 100s, 50s, zeros, big, medium, and small shapes to create some kind of focal point and tension between the flat areas and the more complex areas. I switched subjects and had sketched out a ribbon and broken it into 100s, 50s, zeros, and then kind of mixed in between those to get some 30s and some 70s mixed in. But this is reference from one of my friends' ribbon and invitation suites. Excuse me. So now, a different friend of mine, this is one of her bouquets who gave me permission to work with it. And I'm going to start to lay in some of the detail work, hopefully the way that our reference material artist did with the bigs, the mediums, the smalls, the darks, the mediums, the lights. So let's see how we do. I'm going to leave that picture where I can see it. I have my palette still built from the stuff back behind. So I'm going to use some of it as like a kind of mother color to help tie these colors in together. And I'm going to find a couple different floral images to get some color families. I might look at some of my take it apart pictures and use some of these kind of beiges. I was excited about how this guy turned out. I thought he was fun. So maybe what I could do is I'll start with my darks and my cools because I want them to sink behind, and I had success on this little painting. And then I can use some of these cools to mix up some of my greens. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scooch these over to the side so I have some more mixing space. Excuse me. I'm going to clean this out a bit. Just going to kind of grab my violets and know that I can work with those later. Hopefully I kind of remember some of my recipes if I needed to kind of recreate some of it. I think I can use this for some of my middle ground, or maybe if I use yellows and trying to create beiges, I can kind of use that to neutralize. I'm going to keep that brush going. Got white paint everywhere, sorry. Dropped my knife in there earlier. Okay. All right, let's switch. I'm going to move my blue over a little bit. Excuse me. This was my background color, which originally I had not mixed up quite enough of it. So when I went to mix it a second time, I got kind of close. Save that there. Save that brush so I can cut in with it. Okay, so let's mix up some of the greens, I think is what I'll work through. Look at this again. I want to think often like we do, 150, 0. So I like these darks in here. And I think to make those darks, I might use a little of the Viridian and a little of the Phthalo. But I think I'm going to mix a little of my violet. I'll make a dark violet to put in there to push them way back. to reference the violets that are going on in other places. I'm going to start with my violet. I had used Prussian. Scooch these out of the way. And I had used alizarin. I used more alizarin than the Prussian. It's a really rich, dark value. Bluer than I want it, but I'm just going to run with it. Okay, so let's use some of that to build a couple dark greens. So what did I say? I'd use a little Viridian, use a little of the Thylacine. I'm going to use a little Payne's Gray. I'm going to use a lot of that. And then if we remember from our color theory, how would we neutralize that? We could use our reds because that's opposite on the color wheel. But I think I'm going to make it bluer first. But I'm going to use my violet, knowing that that red is in there opposite the green, and see what happens. Oh yeah, that's good. That Thylacine is strong. I think it's good. So somewhere in here. Okay, I kind of want to leave these brushes handy so that if I want to cut some of those colors in, I can. And I think I'm still going to stick to my synthetic flats, but I might use a little bit smaller one. You can see I really like the bigger flats. I'm going to use some of my medium to thin down my paint. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shift. I don't think I'm going to use the that solvent anymore. I think I'm going to use the Gamblin solvent-free gel, which will help me retain a little bit of those brush strokes. So I'm going to find a kind of clean spot on my palette. It's like a jelly. When we use the fluid medium, it kind of has them lay down a little more. This one's got a little more tackiness and a little more body to it. So I'm just going to charge my brush up. Actually, I'm going to take a big hunk. I'm going to mix it in with my green. It's really blue. I might make like 3 marks with this, and then I'm going to add some red. So adding that gel made it a little softer. I'm going to look at my reference material again. I want to kind of organize myself. Here's these tendrils. Here's this. So this is kind of where the darks could start. I'm going to try and float these kind of over the top of the purple and blue. Okay, and then I'm going to switch. I want it to be a little greener, a little less teal, I think. I'm going to actually take some of the oxide. But I'm mixing into that old family of color just so I can kind of keep them relating to one another. Get off of there. Scoop out that old color. I want it a little darker. So I'm gonna add a little more Payne's Gray. Yeah, I think those two look pretty good together. Look at my reference material again. Kind of reacclimate. That'll be my area I start from, I think. Trying to kind of layer some of these. Mix a little together. I have a little of that green maybe over here so I can have some visual balance. It's like I'm using the picture but fairly loosely. Here's a little bit of a bigger, trying to push the paint out of the top of the bristles down back to the bottom. I think that's it. And then I'll switch the value again. Here's where I might come in and use some of my original blue. Looks a little bit like toothpaste. I don't know about that. I'll go with it. Because I'm not painting this area as flat as the others, I'm not so worried if my brush has a little complexity to it. But I'm still really trying to think in these stages of 3. What's happening here? I'm gonna leave that. So I'm kind of layering, knowing this is my middle, and then I'll shift up to a brighter value here in a minute. I think I'll switch to a higher chroma green using that, this one in a minute, and I may not mix it up very much. I also feel like there's some really nice kind of umbery colors floating in there, so I might add that for a little complexity. Oops, sorry. So this hasn't been very long since I painted the first layer, so all that paint underneath is still wet, which I'm excited about. Like, I'm gonna let that kind of help pull into the marks a bit. It had a lot of that solvent-free fluid in it, so it's pretty thin. Okay, I'm gonna switch up to having it move into this brighter. Maybe I'll do a transition where I'll grab some and mix it with this, and then I might do some more straight out of the tube. But look at that great value scale, and then I'm hoping that I'm painting that in layers without squishing them together. That does not look like toothpaste. I like that color. Here's my brush. Here's my cheap brushes at work here. This little guy keeps sticking out. I want to be careful of him. I'm not sure I like the consistency, so I'm going to add a little more of the gel. Loosely reference my image. Yeah, there's that little hair. I think I'm getting kind of close to being ready to do the flowers. I think I'm going to take this color, see if I want to put it one more spot maybe. So some of them I layered 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Some of them are only 2. Some of them I left behind. So I just want to see if I want some more balance. Looks like I have a pretty heavy run of it over here. It's a little big. That's where I'm going to cut back with my violet. Kind of reshape it. Okay, I think that's pretty good for now. Yeah, I feel like it needs to get darker right here. I'm going to come back with some dark. Maybe a little bigger. Something to kind of support the petals in. I don't want that there. A little deletion. Okay, so I'm going to come over onto my palette here and see if I can mix up some colors for some of the flowers. And I want to mix up 3, I think. I liked where this guy was going. Oh, I wish I remember how I did that. I think I can figure it out. So something along those lines. And maybe a little more yellow to work against all the violet so they kind of shimmy. Here's where I might look and see what this guy does. Those are really bright. He definitely is using cerulean. I was thinking that the other day and I don't have any. That's like alizarans and Prussians, probably some Viridians. Oh, and yeah, using these really nice neutrals. That's a pretty high chroma orange though, which is nice. Maybe I'll start there. I can mix up some higher chroma oranges to kind of sit in the back, and I can use what I have on my plane. This was the orange that I made from Cadmium and Cadlight. Cadlight and Cadlight. I got this orange, so I'll use that. That's what I neutralized the back with, so I'll have some of that family history in there, color history. So let's see what we can get. I don't know what's more fun, painting or mixing. I guess they go hand in hand. Let's grab some pretty white. I'm going to use the titanium so that it's a little more of like a powder color. There's a little violet on the palette under there, which I'm not upset about. Like, I'm kind of excited because that might help knock down some of that bright acidity. Yeah, I think it's getting that kind of peachy color because of the violet. I could even add a little more if I wanted it to dull down. So orange and blue are opposite, but the violet was made with that pretty heavy Prussian. So that's what's negating it some. See how we did. Not that I have to match this, but maybe I'll do a little bit more yellow light. Just a little, just to warm it up. Get a little brighter. And then I might take some of this and some of this, kind of mix it in between. I wonder if he's using burnt siennas in his. I don't have any burnt sienna. Just thinking. Do a little alizarin, a little of this orange. I'm gonna use a little yellow ochre. Allowing some of that violet to pull in there to make it a little muddier. That's pretty good. That could be the darks back there. Yeah, I'll start with these. I might look at another photo too. Have a different bouquet just to see. All of these were kind of the inspiration. Some of that. Yeah, I might mix a little more before I jump into the painting so that I've got some options. I think I want something a little pinker. I'm gonna grab some of that. I'm gonna grab the rest of my titanium. I hadn't gotten my palette knife cleaned off, so it had some of that, this kind of earthy color. Oh, that's kind of gross. Go with no. I'm pulling up a lot of that violet. We're gonna have to fix this. Maybe not. Maybe I'll cut that in half and lighten it and cool it. So I think I'm going to use the rest of the titanium. I'll clean that up in a minute. I'm using the mixing white because it's there and I want to cool it off. So I think I'm going to use the Prussian, but barely. It's too much. That's more fun. So always just kind of thinking like warms, cools, and complements. It seems like a good way to unveil it. Ooh, yeah, better. And I'll make some that are a little less desaturated in a bit. Okay, let's see if this can get us going on our flowers. I'm gonna come back to this though as my starting point. I'm gonna start a new brush. I'm going to use another synthetic flat. Might load it up with a little bit of this, and then I'll go back to using my gel. Just kind of get it charged up. Where to start? It's always the scary part. I think I'll try to do some of the darks in this flower first. Grab a little of that medium, a little green in it. Kind of helped my cause. Oh, all that yellow is making it very transparent, so my brush strokes are not covering my pencil very well. But I'm just trying to kind of lay in a couple darks on it. Let me see if there's anywhere else. I feel like this, I'll cut around those. I might push some here and here and here. I might darken it a little. But that's super bright. That's some of the green that was wet, kind of coming into the palette. Maybe a little in here. Just trying to kind of balance these in a few spots. Okay, I'm going to jump up to a brighter value. Grab some more of this gel. I'll also help it dry. And because this is more opaque, I should be able to cover up some of those pencil lines. Kind of allowing some of that other wet color to mingle a little bit. I love these little flyaways. I feel like I need some of those. I'll leave that to put some highlights on. I'm going to shift to this one, but I'm going to add a tiny, tiny bit of pink or red, just the littlest bit of alizarin. You'll notice as I start building these smaller areas, I'm probably going to use less of the palette knife and more just subtle little mixes with the brush, because I know I don't need much paint. I can mix it up pretty quick. And try a little bit bigger mark. Ooh, a lot of green in there. I'm going to scoop out the brush a little. There's a lot of paint down by the ferrule. Look at all that paint. And maybe a little bit of it here, but I'm going to add a little yellow. So each one I'm changing just a bit. Not sure if that's where I was going to go. I'm going to go here too. So by mixing 5 colors first and then mixing a little bit around each different pass, I've got a little bit more complexity. Here's some green in there. Wipe that out, mix it in. I don't want to lose all those darks I had under there. Add a little white. There's that violet kind of picking up in it. A little violet and a little green from the painting is kind of neutralizing and making that little bit of beige. Not liking how that's ending. It's a little white. So this is like a messy, soft mixing white. I can clean this later when I need it to be straight white again. I'm allowing this paint to be a little chunky. I'm going to cut some green back in, go back to that dark. Cutting back in with a couple darks so it'll feel like some of these things are sitting down. I'm kind of cutting on the back end of the flower so it starts to feel kind of like a bloom. So it's this one, and this one that kind of relate. And then I want to kind of shift the values through these somewhat. I want these pretty bright now. I have a lot of green on my brush. I'm going to use all this mixing white. Grab some medium. Yep. So these beiges are coming from that little bit of violet working against the yellow. And then the greens in there are canceling out the reds that are in the oranges. So I'm getting these kind of fun neutrals that kind of pop up in the florals. And I'm glad I put some of that purple under there to kind of let it feel like the ribbon is showing through. I'm going to switch to a little pink. That's all my mixing white. I'll clean that up in a minute. But that's some of the old color that was from these oranges, some of the violet underneath, and some of this pink I made. It's pretty good right there. I want to be careful with these edges so that I don't delete all of them. Kind of keep coming back to reference my photo. This is kind of a violety pink, so I'm going to add a little more alizarin. Maybe grab some of my earlier violet. Pretty close. I added a little more Prussian. I think I'm going to clean up my white area and then finish out a few more. Got this kind of yucky. The soft mixing white, and I'll do the titanium. I look like I had my cheap brushes drop into my thing there. I'm going to pull that out of there while I see it. Yeah, that's the cheap handle. Oh, that's a bummer. Okay. So I think I'm going to try to do some fairly clean pinkish whites or yellow whites for here. to kind of shift gears. Kind of running out of room on my palette though, so I think I'm going to scoop some of these and make them smaller so I can find a little room. So I'm getting so close. Oh, I keep dropping stuff on my painting. I think it's time for new brushes. Just making a little room for some cleaner pinks. Probably if I wasn't on camera, I would start another palette, to be honest, but I'm just gonna make this one work. I would keep this one and then start another one alongside it. But I might not. I'm close to the end here. So I want these to be cool, so I'm gonna use my alizarin. I think I'm gonna use the mixing white instead of the titanium in hopes that that little bit of transparency will keep it a little brighter. A little bit of alizarin. It looks just like Pepto-Bismol, so I think I'm gonna add a little cad. Oof, that might have been too much. And I don't think I can handle it being quite that acidy. So I'm going to borrow like the tiniest bit of a green that I made. Oh, that's better. And that's pretty dark. Too dark for me. So I'm going to cut over here with the titanium and just whatever is left in my knife. So it's like a 4 or 5 value. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to start a new brush. Just another synthetic flat. I'm going to steal some of this medium. You'll notice I'm not as careful about keeping that medium clean because I know I'm going to use it all, as opposed to when I use the other medium, I'm a little more careful to not contaminate it. But this is, I'm going to burn through this. And the gel again kind of helps it flow better, but it also retains some of that chunkier quality. If you wanted it to be really impasto, you could use the cold wax medium. I can talk about that in another video. Here. I'm going to kind of load the brush with a couple different colors. Excuse me. Oh, that green going, that lighter pink. I'm kind of glancing over at my photo reference kind of loosely. That was a little of the green in the middle. Ooh, that's pretty though because the green was really blue, and so it kind of turned a violet. I want some white. more straight mixing white kind of floating on top. Here's where I'll switch to make a little bit of a yellow-ish one. Or maybe I'll do more pink right there actually first. Pink, pink, pink. I'm going to use this brighter one. So again, it's like I'm using my source information, but barely. Like I'm using it more as a guide to help me build my design and have my eye move around the picture plane in a way. More soft mixing white right out of the tube. That's going to take a while to dry. That's the yellow one. This is muddy. I'm gonna fix that up here in a minute with some darks. More medium. So I took some of that green that was in there and kind of swirled it in so it shifts the color just a little. I've been hesitant to paint that, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. We'll see. Yeah, I'm going to switch it to a little bit of yellow. Grab some more white. End up keeping in that family, so I mixed right into the paint I had. That's fun. So that mixing white is really thick. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh well. And then to come up here, these are really darker, but I might shift something a little pinker. Let's see. Let's try and work with what we've got on the palette. See what we come up with. There was some of that brighter orange in there. That purple is coming under. Wonder if I'll put the a little more alizarin to get into that pinker family. Yeah, I think so. And I'll cut it in half. Maybe I'll put a little cad in the other one. A little more. That violet is pulling up from underneath. Yeah, seems good. The paint now has quite a bit of medium in it because I've been using a lot of the paints that already had it, but I might put out a little more. Let's see. This is like a different shape. I'm going to do the dark first. These seem to be a little bigger. Oh, that's a green, but I'll do a little peach. There's some dark in there. How do you make brown? Red and green. That's pretty violet-y. I'm going to use my orange or red. There's a lot of white, so it's not getting very dark. Payne's gray. That's too muddy. This is a little ivory black. Make it work. Using some of these other colors from around the palette. And I might leave some of those a little bigger. Wrap that guy a little. And I feel like I need to cut back in with a few more greens. And then maybe later I'll come in with some brighter whites. I feel like I'm missing whole sections. So this got all kind of crazy. So I'm gonna push these together. Boy, that's pretty. Next to the violet ribbon. Find somewhere to put that. Yeah, I think I might, you know what I might do? I know what I'm gonna do. I'm going to do a couple of highlights, but not with white. I'm going to go back to my blue so it kind of sits up on top. And finally get rid of that little guy. And then those baby blues against the oranges should really sing like highlights. No. It's like 1, 2, 3 in a row. I feel like this is too coming down here. So I'm going to break this up somehow. And then I might just step back and see if it needs a few more little flyaways maybe. Or if the flowers feel a little too all the same. I think I'm gonna kind of wrap it up here. I'll step away from it for a while and then see if there's anything I want to change or shift after I back up from it. I want some more greenery up here. I'm going to use the straight permanent green light. Okay, I think it's time to stop. Gotta walk away. This is problematic, but I'll come back to it. Okay. next time I see you, hopefully I will have revised and edited some things. Hopefully you've got some reference to our formal analysis of Jörg Dressler. I have the little bit more complicated organic information. I have the flat backgrounds, and I'm going to come back in a little while also and maybe cut in some of these out of the tube kind of bright higher chroma areas, something like this, but I haven't figured out quite where to put them. When I laid out my drawing, I had them running up the side, but I'm not sure. We'll see what I do. And I think it needs more whites kind of glittering on top, but I'll come back to that. Okay, see you guys in a bit.